Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a story of family drama, betrayal, and conflict so intense it actually ended up forging an entire nation.
I mean, what kind of struggle, what kind of trial is powerful enough to completely redefine who you are? To answer that, we're going to look at the life of a man whose name literally meant deceiver, and see how a lifetime of conflict changed everything for him.
All right, so our story kicks off with Jacob in a place called Haran. Now, Jacob himself is on the run because he just tricked his own brother. But in a serious twist of irony, he's about to get a taste of his own medicine.
So he lands at his uncle Laban's home and immediately falls head over heels for Laban's younger daughter, Rachel. He makes a deal. He'll work for 7 years, and in exchange, he gets to marry her. And because he was so in love, those 7 years felt like nothing.
But then, the wedding night comes, and in the dark, Laban pulls a classic bait and switch. He sends his older daughter, Leah, into Jacob's tent instead. Jacob wakes up the next morning married to the wrong woman. And this is Laban's excuse. The deceiver just got totally deceived.
And get this, Laban doesn't just apologize, he actually doubles down. He uses his own trickery to trap Jacob, telling him, hey, you can still have Rachel, but it'll cost you another 7 years of work. Jacob is so trapped by his love for Rachel that he agrees, and that single decision just sets the stage for decades of family drama.
So as you can imagine, this forced marriage just ignites an absolutely brutal rivalry between the two sisters, Leah and Rachel. They're now co-wives, competing for their husband's love, for status, and for what was most important back then, having children.
And this is where the tragedy is just so perfectly balanced and so painful. Leah isn't loved by Jacob, but she can have children. Rachel is deeply loved, but she's barren. You see, each sister has the one thing the other wants more than anything in the world. It's just a perfect storm for jealousy.
And you can just feel Leah's heartbreak in her words. Every time she has a son, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, she names them something that reflects her hope, her desperate hope that this child, this time, will finally be the thing that makes her husband love her. But it never is.
Meanwhile, Rachel's pain is just boiling over into this all-consuming desperation. She lashes out at Jacob, saying her barrenness feels like a kind of death. This wasn't just some private sadness. It was a constant, explosive source of conflict in their home.
But here's the wild part. Out of this deeply broken, painful, rivalrous family, something totally unexpected starts to take shape. This messy, jealous, heartbreaking situation becomes the unlikely crucible where a nation is born.
I mean, the rivalry gets so intense, they even start bargaining over folk remedies. Leah's son finds these plants called mandrakes, which people back then thought helped with fertility. Rachel sees them and begs for some. And Leah's price? A night with their husband, Jacob. It's just a raw, desperate deal.
So the family tree just keeps growing in this really messy, complicated way. Rachel can't have kids, so she gives her handmaid to Jacob to have children for her. Leah sees this and, not wanting to be outdone, does the exact same thing with her handmaid. And then finally, Rachel does give birth to Joseph. Through this tangled web of wives and maids, 12 sons are born, and these 12 sons become the foundation for the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so fast forward 20 long years. 20 years of service, rivalry, and tension. The relationship between Jacob and his father-in-law, Laban, is at an absolute breaking point. God tells Jacob, it's time, go home. And that sets off a really dramatic escape.
Jacob knows there is no way Laban is just going to let him walk away, not after he's become so wealthy. So he waits until Laban is away shearing his sheep, and he just bolts. He gathers his wives, his kids, all his flocks, and makes a run for it.
But in a final act of defiance, Rachel does something incredibly bold. She steals her father's teraphim, his household idols. Now, this was more than just petty theft. These little statues were likely tied to inheritance rights, so this was Rachel's way of making a claim on her family's legacy.
Oh, and Laban is furious, absolutely livid. He chases down Jacob's caravan, demanding to know who stole his gods. Jacob has no idea what Rachel did, so he says, whoever took them, let them die. The tension is just insane as Laban tears through every tent. But Rachel, well, she's her father's daughter. She hides the idols in her camel's saddle, sits right on top of them, and coolly tells her dad she can't get up because it's that time of the month. The trick works, and Laban leaves with nothing.
So Jacob is finally free from Laban. But the relief doesn't last long, because he's immediately facing an even greater terror from his past. His brother, Esau, the brother he cheated, the one who swore he'd kill him, is coming to meet him. And he's not alone. He's got 400 men with him.
Jacob is absolutely terrified. He starts splitting up his family and his flocks into two groups, hoping that if Esau attacks, at least one group might survive. He sends all of them across the Jabbok River, and then he waits, all by himself, in the dark. It is right here, at his lowest, most vulnerable moment, that his life is about to change forever.
Suddenly, a man appears out of the darkness and starts wrestling with him, and they fight all night until daybreak. Jacob, realizing this isn't just some random guy, clings to him. He's not running anymore, he's not tricking anyone, he is holding on for dear life, and he refuses to let go, demanding, "I will not let you go unless you bless me."
And then the man asks him, "What is your name?" And he says it, Jacob. He owns his identity as the deceiver. And in return, the man gives him a new name, Israel. Because he says, "You have struggled with God and with men, and you have overcome." His entire identity is rewritten in that moment, from the guy who schemes against people to the one who wrestles face to face with God.
Jacob calls the place where this all went down Peniel, which means face of God. This wasn't just a physical fight. It was a deep spiritual turning point. He looked God in the face, he struggled, and he walked away. He wasn't unscathed, he had a limp for the rest of his life, but he was alive and he was completely transformed.
Jacob's story really shows us that sometimes our truest name, our deepest character, isn't forged when things are comfortable and easy. It's forged in the middle of the night, in a desperate struggle we're not even sure we can win. And it kind of leaves us with a question for ourselves, right? What was the struggle that gave you your real name?